future is now. Bringing the game, change and style. The future of monetization for brands when it come to gaming. Break it down.
Hello and welcome to Game Changing Style, the Fashion in Gaming podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Tracy Greenan.
And I'm Fia Dahlia.
Today we have Jorrel Batac with us. He is the founder and principal consultant of the consultancy SXNGA. Jorrel, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here and congrats for launching the podcast.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What is SXNGA and how did you get involved in esports?
Sure. So SXNGA is a global consulting agency. We have strategic partners all over the globe that really focus on key sectors. I think right now, because of excitement around gaming, esports, and education, and the intersection of all of those things, I'm really focusing a lot of the work around that particular industry and sector. But I've spent the last 18 years really operating at that intersection of games, education, and community. I've served as an educational leader for various nonprofit organizations, and at the same time, was doing a little side hustle here and there, looking at how, you can create unique community events. And in my last role, I served as the COO for NASEF, which is the Network of Academic and Scholastic Esports Federations, and the United States Esports Federation, developing esports education and competition pathways around the world. And so now continuing that work with my consulting agency and excited about a lot of the opportunities and things that we'll be bringing to the fold.
Could you maybe give us a brief overview of what esports are exactly?
Sure. So this one tends to be a little confused here and there. Esports is really ultimately the competitive side of gaming, because you can really think of gaming as like the broader industry, the broader culture, but esports is the activation of the competitive side, and that can be inclusive of other aspects. I really like to think that esports is community because it brings the gaming community together.
What do the viewership numbers look like for esports?
So I pulled just some stats from esports charts because I figured it might be helpful, but that's a great resource to take a look at when you want to see kind of the landscape. At the moment, there's really kind of, I would say, 3 or 4 top titles that are viewed. I guess the OG is League of Legends, which has had 7 million peak viewers, upwards of a $9 million prize pool in total. I would say the second one, which I had an opportunity to witness the recent championships, is Mobile Legends, which has about 4 million peak viewers and then around an $8 million prize pool. Then the third would be Counter-Strike, or CS2 at the moment, which has about 2 million peak viewers, so less viewership than the other 2 titles, but has probably one of the larger prize pools at $20 million total in prize pool. Then it goes Valorant and Dota, and then there's a whole list in terms of Brawl Stars, PUBG Mobile, Fortnite, Free Fire. But I would say at the moment, viewership really sits League of Legends being one of the older and most celebrated titles. But Mobile Legends is catching up pretty quick.
Tell us, how important do you feel esports are to gaming culture? What are there any major points of this industry one should know about?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I think it's important to distinguish between gaming and esports, because a lot of people will float billion-dollar industry and all this money coming into the industry, which is great, and it helps advocate for what we're building. But at the same time, esports is only a fraction of the gaming industry. So in terms of those numbers, it's a little inflated, but I think, and I do believe, obviously, because I'm investing my time in it, it's growing incredibly fast. It's taken, I think, a surge because of COVID, but it really is, with it being integrated into the Olympic movement now, there's really a broader opportunity. And I really think that esports is the opportunity to bring the gaming culture together, because a lot of gaming is really online spaces, whether it's, just through community discords. And esports events are the opportunity to bring that community together. And it's not necessarily just around the competition, right? Esports is a way to bring people in the same space to celebrate the culture. And that can be inclusive of the competition side, the music side, and obviously now fashion, I think, can also be integrated into that space.
What do you think are the major misconceptions that people have about esports outside of the video game world?
I think for non-endemic folks, esports, when you look at it, right, you just see the players sitting in front of a computer screen or a console or, a mobile phone, just playing video games. It looks like they're just sitting in front of a screen. But when you take a step back and you really explore really the effort, the work, and the organization that goes behind making those things happen, there's an entire industry. I mean, a good, I guess, connection or similarity would be traditional sports. When you look at traditional sports and you see the field, you see the players on the field, which is, players and esports in the game. There's also the broadcasting, right? There's the management that goes behind that. There's the coaches that are coaching the teams. So I think if you take a step back, you can realize that there's a broader ecosystem that allows for the esports industry to thrive. And then when you include the gaming industry, that now broadens into, the designers, the publishers, and a much broader community. And so it's not just playing video games. I think it's so much more. And it really is all about community. And given the growth of both gaming, esports, and really the internet has really allowed for us to utilize this space as a way to connect people from all over the world. I mean, just seeing some of the interactions between athletes, between players, and even just gamers in general, I think it's a great opportunity to find your community and really explore all of your interests and passions.
So you talk a lot about community with esports, and you mentioned that you were at MOBA, I believe it was.
MLBB, yeah, it was
MLBB?
in Malaysia, yeah.
In Malaysia, so you just came back from an Asian tour. Could you maybe give us some highlights of your
Sure.
travels?
Well, I'm super jet lagged still, but yeah, the last 3 months have been pretty wild. I was in China, Portugal, Korea, Japan, and Malaysia. Just key highlights for some of those places. Portugal, I got to give a shout out to my friends at Esports Insider who put on an amazing event. It's really driven by industry connections. Korea, shout out to Kespa. I had the opportunity to speak at the Global Esports Forum, which is really centered around the conversation of the integration of esports into the Olympic movement. So a lot of representatives were there discussing kind of how the IOC is really integrating and planning the next few years of integrating esports. Japan was just hanging out with some partners. And then Malaysia, which was my last trip, I had the wonderful opportunity to participate in the Moonton M6 Summit and the M6 Global Championships, which is their big event around their game title called Mobile Legends Bang Bang, which is a MOBA similar to League of Legends, but it's a mobile game. And it's huge in Southeast Asia, probably beyond anything that I've ever seen.
How does esports differ between the East and West, Jorrel? It seems more popular in Asia. Why is that?
I've had this conversation with so many different people, and I think it's really intriguing. To me, when I look at the East, I feel like there has been a really solid investment, obviously, in events, in stadiums, and really the infrastructure around esports. I think the other side of it too is that it's really surged given the growth of mobile esports, mobile gaming, because to me, because of the infrastructure, especially in Southeast Asian countries, they didn't have access to fiber or broadband, so they kind of skipped into this infrastructure around mobile, and I think that's allowed for this surge and access to mobile gaming, which I think has grown the mobile gaming scene. In the West, we have a lot of publishers out here. We have a lot of games come from the West. But at the same time, I think because we're so spread out, and then ultimately, we were given the opportunity to have access to PCs, consoles, the esports scene is a little bit different. It's mostly online, and people tend to gather more for the big championship events. And mobile gaming is incredibly small, but I think it has the opportunity to grow in the West as well. Yeah, so I think it's more IRL in the East, but we're starting to see more, I think, in the West as well.
And we saw Fnatic won we're Fnatic fans in this house. So
Nice. Yeah, so Fnatic acquired Onic, which is a Philippines-based team. Cool. And so, yeah, it's really great to see. And that's a good example of how the West is slowly starting to pick up on what's happening in the East as well. And I think given that esports is global, we'll start to see more of that.
Yeah, cool to see it go worldwide like that. So you mentioned earlier that League of Legends has the highest viewership, and we know that the top player of League of Legends, Faker, had their own skin created. So does character customization play a role in other esports or modern esports today, or how might it impact player engagement?
Absolutely. I think just starting kind of personally with my own personal example, I play Apex Legends. And the only reason why I got into Apex Legends is because I think it was season 2 or season 3. They dropped a character named Crypto, who was like this Asian dude flying drones, really strategic. I got really excited about that. I'm like, ooh, this makes it really interesting for me. And I think part of that is because I personally was able to identify with the character. And I think that plays a huge role in a lot of gamers' identities. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a one-to-one match, but I think it's more about feeling like you're part of the game and feeling like, it's representative of, the message or the symbols or whatever it is that you're trying to create within the game. And I think it also plays a role, like you said, with Faker for fandom, because by creating these skins, I think like CS had probably the most expensive skin, something close to like over 1 point something million for a skin. And I think it's a way for, the consumer, the player to really connect deeper with the fandom or, the brand within the game as well.
I'm interested about brands. Can we talk about that? And where are the opportunities for them in esports?
I think it's shifted a lot in the last 3 years. I think early on, brands were just kind of throwing ideas at the wall. From what I've seen, the most immediate and common activations tend to be primarily through the individual content creators and influencers, but also through the teams or the pro orgs. And then, at events, I think is really where I've seen a lot of different activations. And that could be both online and offline, whether it's slapping your brand on the stream or having a brand presence in terms of an exhibit within the space. I think there's different ways. I think right now, merch in general for a lot of the different pro orgs tends to be kind of the big activation for them, because this is huge for a lot of esports brands. Again, it goes back to that fandom piece. You talked about Faker. I mean, T1 was telling me that that's probably their second biggest revenue source, is all of the merch that they sell because of Faker and because of all of the pro team because of that brand. So now I think with the industry still being so young, I still think that there's so many different more opportunities to get creative with how you activate. I've started to see now brands like automotive brands getting involved, and finding creative campaigns to involve the players. And I think it's a big opportunity for a lot of different folks, and especially for the fashion industry, which I think is untapped. I think there's a lot of great examples already that are starting to show up.
Great.
Cool. There's some cool merch out there for these sports teams. Have there been any successful collaborations between a fashion brand or esports and esports team?
I think the biggest one was actually back in 2019 when Louis Vuitton designed the League of Legends Championship trophy and travel case. It was such a trip to see it on stage. It was like Louis Vuitton right there. I know like Gucci, Ralph Lauren, Puma, G-Shock, and others have sponsored teams directly. So they'll slap the logo on the jerseys or the merch. Adidas, I know, has partnered with several orgs and was the official sponsor for the Esports World Cup this last year. So that was a really big activation. I know Balenciaga collaborated with Fortnite, but maybe more personally, when I was at the M6 Championships, one of the companies, I think a local Malaysian company, not sure, but Fairy, they're a jewelry company. They actually created several unique pieces that were from the game. They had pendants, watches, rings, earrings, and they had a stand set up. But then, to really elevate what it is that they were creating, when the champions, stepped on stage as part of being awarded the trophy, they also awarded them, watch pieces, some rings. I think they made the M6 championship ring, which I thought was really exciting. So a lot of great collaborations already, but again, I think there's still a lot of room to innovate and create.
I think you just answered my next question. I was going to ask you, what are your thoughts on luxury brands entering the sport? So you feel that there's still lots of room for brands to get into this industry?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think what they've all done is really just created the playing field for it to occur. But I think there's so much more room. I mean, the Fairy one that I just shared, I think that was a good example, but that's just the beginning to me. I think given especially both of your experience, that intersection between, online, offline, what does it look like in digital? What does it look like IRL? There's so much more room to play with there.
So you're saying that when you were talking about Louis Vuitton, they were, so I'm just curious about innovative ways that
Mhm.
the brands can get in there. There's different ways, so physical and digital with what Louis Vuitton did with the case and the trophy, you said, is that correct?
Yeah.
And then you could go digital with skins. Is there anything else that they can position themselves that you feel would be interesting?
When I think about how brands engage in general with the space, because it's so young and very small and tight knit, I think it's important, even beyond the actual activation. This is really a relationship based driven industry because it's so tight knit. I think the challenge right now for brands is ultimately engaging meaningfully and in a longer term and sustainable way. So I can't come up with all the ideas, but I think it's really more about finding a partner that you can spend a long term, kind of activation with. Because as the industry grows, if you invest within that partnership, you're going to start to see that partnership thrive over a longer term. So I've seen a lot of brands kind of jump in because they want to test the waters and then jump out. I really go back to meaningful long-term relationship building and sustainable partnerships.
Can you tell us about what are some kind of challenges that brands face when they're entering esports and how to overcome them?
Yeah, I mean that goes back to it again. I think the industry is small, so the impressions that you make within the space are really important because you could easily, if you mess up in that first few times, it's okay, but trust is really important. And the more that you can build trust, not just with, the audience, but with your partners, I think the stronger your case and whatever it is that you're trying to create will be. What I love about this industry is it's full of gamers who are passionate about community, and they're usually pretty welcoming and supportive. The other challenge I would say is because it's so young and small, the budgets are really small and tight, right? Because again, it goes back to that inflated numbers of gaming. It's, oh, there's billions of dollars. There's not in esports. There's not billions of dollars. There's, maybe some money that they can play with. And I think that goes back to being creative with how you're activating. In some cases, it may not be you're getting that, six-figure paycheck off the bat, but if you're forming those relationships and you're looking at that longer term sustainability, I think there's an opportunity to grow within the space.
Right?
Absolutely. Do you maybe have any further advice that you might give to some fashion brands looking to enter the esports market?
Yeah, I mean, talk to you two. You two are the experts, right? I think even just between the three of us, just having a conversation, I think is a great way to start. And then again, just connect because I think esports in general, it's a global industry, but it's also very local, right? The experiences that you have, the in-person activations or the in-person just relationships that you're building, those are super important. So it's important to be out in the community in order to find your path.
Where do you see the future of esports and brands, particularly fashion brands, going?
At the end of the day, to me, gaming and esports is such a unique ecosystem because it brings so many different industries together, multiple stakeholders, industries, different communities in such a unique way, both online and offline. And to me, fashion is definitely a part of that ecosystem, because fashion has traditionally integrated into sports, into entertainment, and esports and gaming is really the next wave of that. So I think fashion is definitely part of that ecosystem and has a lot of opportunity to grow. And, for the future, I'm hopeful. It still has a lot of pain points and a lot of growing pains in general, but I think if we continue to invest our time, our energy, and again, goes back to community, and build that community, then I think we can thrive and grow for sure.
Sounds like a lot of opportunities and possibilities ahead for the
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited. 2025 is going to be pretty wild.
excellent. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Jorrel, and for everyone listening. Where can listeners find you to connect with you and Senga?
I'm a avid LinkedIner, so hit me up on LinkedIn. Pretty easy. Jorrel, you'll find me. And then Senga is SXNGA. I'm sure you'll see it. You'll be able to find that as well. But definitely reach out. I'd love to collaborate or even just have a conversation.
Or is there a website that people can reach you at as well?
Yeah, it's the company name, SXNGA.com. But feel free to hit me up. You can just say hello. It's hello@SXNGA.com. Just say hello and we'll have a conversation.
Right. Well, we would like to close this with an esports and fashion trivia question to ask our audience.
Ooh.
Question is, which luxury brand partnered with the esports team Gen G in 2022? Was it A, Louis Vuitton, B, Burberry, C, Ralph Lauren, or D, Gucci?
Please let us know in the comments what you're thinking, and then you can check our website for the answer.
And also make sure to like, subscribe, and follow us on our socials, Game Changing Style everywhere, or visit our website, gamechangingstyle.com. Thanks so much, everyone. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
The future is now. Bringing the game, changing style. The future of monetization. For brands when it come to gaming. Break it down.